Yeah, it's what Jim Rohn says. He says, you never go to work thinking of the vacation, and you never go to the vacation thinking of work, because at those times you have a place and a time for everything, right? And it happens. Like I caught myself where it's movie night with the family. We got the snacks for days, right? That we never finish, by the way. It just stays in
Mm-hmm.
the freezer. When I'm in deep work, there's like a huge rush of dopamine. It's just like I've accomplished something big, something that's mine, right? But when someone comes in and say, "Hey, do something for me instead," it's like, oh hell no, like it
Mm-hmm.
just sucks. But that's a good point. I think having awareness about what puts you in a slump and how to overcome it, that I think that's a big win right there. I think Julie Stoyan, she explained something. She says she labels her calendar into blocks of availability, right? Meaning that, or her percentage of deep work. So 8 a.m. or 6 a.m. it can be 100% deep work, right? Where she can focus 100% attention. So she puts tasks that require deep work in that slot. However, at 8 a.m. when she drops her kids off, it's only like 10% deep work, where maybe I'm cleaning up my emails or just updating something admin related, right? So I thought maybe that's a good lesson to share with the world right there.
There's energy management, and then there's also context and how would you categorize that? Basically time of day. It's kind of like how for a lot of people, the middle of the day is the tornado. So you can't really realistically schedule deep, impactful flow type work then. So it's where you see a lot of people get up early or they do it late at night because that's when people aren't bothering them.
That's a good point. I think it's just like that book, Eat the Frog, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
it's like just have that when your willpower is the highest in the morning, do it then, right? Focus all your attention on completing the test then. I feel like I'm in a super zone in the nighttime, but I realize if there's something on my inside of me saying you could be hanging out with your family instead, so don't do that. And family's priority for me, so I can't
Yes.
get into deep work. So
Yes. There's things you can't compromise depending on your season of life.
exactly.
I definitely resonate to that. It's like when I feel like the people aren't pulling for my attention and you get that space, but now it's family time, it's easy for my mind of like, oh, I can finally think about that thing or brainstorm. And then time goes by and you're like, dang it, I want to be more present.
Yeah, it's what Jim Rohn says. He says, you never go to work thinking of the vacation, and you never go to the vacation thinking of work, because at those times you have a place and a time for everything, right? And it happens. Like I caught myself where it's movie night with the family. We got the snacks for days, right? That we never finish, by the way. It just stays in the freezer or the refrigerator. And then in that time, I'm like, oh, let me look at my phone. I'll check something out on Notion, like complete a task or respond to emails. And it's like, the family starts to think like, oh, well, you're choosing to stay away from us on purpose. So I think that's a really good lesson there too. Have when you commit to something, go all in.
Boundaries.
And
Yeah.
exactly, have your boundaries and schedule time for vacations and family times. I think that's super important, which I haven't done as perfectly as I did a year ago.
Same. And it's like all of it's a work in progress, but you can set some hard and fast. I feel like we can all set some boundaries and some black and white that help get us there. It's like I've been listening to a little bit of Matthew McConaughey, Art of Living. They put that on that big event with, Tony Robbins and whatnot. And I haven't listened to a lot of it, but he talks about, and I was just thinking about this, how there's an art and a science to a lot of things in life. And the science, I forget how he phrases it, but the science, the more pragmatic side of things, can foster greater art, greater creativity. So it's kind of like discipline equals freedom, or inspiration finds you working, or people think think outside the box. Well, sometimes constraints actually create more possibilities because you don't have too many options, or it's not too chaotic, right? And so I think when you can minimize the chaos so that you can create something beautiful within confines, I feel like that applies to life and business. And as a whole.
That's a really good point. I like that. It's like you said, when you're narrowed down, I remember thinking like someone says there's no freedom when you have a schedule, like a strict schedule, right? And I think at the same time, it does create a whole ton of freedom because it didn't take that brain work, right? To get into that state. If you know that, hey, at this time I'm doing this and at this time I'm doing this, you can just run with it. And at the end of the day, if you have spots for emergencies, which we tried, right, with one of our clients, right, and it worked for a very long time until other people want to pull that time.
On that point, I just heard a good nugget about living in illusions. And so starting with expectations, right? This idea that oftentimes reality is not enough for us. We're not content with reality as it is. So whether that's someone not meeting our expectations, or we think things should be easier or more fun, or I should be on a high all the time, right? Going through hard things that actually paved the path to something beautiful. Like oftentimes that is too hard to face for us, so that we will oftentimes chase a false existence, right? Like we'll chase those expectations that are not reasonable. And then before we know it, we're trying to live in some type of utopia that is never going to happen, and ultimately land in an illusion that's not soaking up the reality right in front of us. So it's kind of this chain. You could simplify it to say, man, when expectations aren't realistic, and when we are attached to those unrealistic expectations, we often live in an illusion of what something should be, and we miss what could be right in front of us.
That's interesting. I like that. That's like, I think that idea, I've heard of that, but in the framework of law of attraction, right? Where someone, I remember I knew this lady who, she always felt like people are talking bad about her, right? So in her reality, in her mind, she was thinking like, oh, the delusion was people are talking bad, laughing at me behind my back all the time, laughing, making fun of me, right? And then she would slowly start to do things that confirmed it, right? So she didn't,
Right.
no one was laughing at her. I remember when she was hanging out with us, and we were in front of a group of people, and then the people left, and then she says they were talking bad about me, and I'm like, no, like they were not. I promise you, 100% they were not. But then she slowly started doing things like wearing raggedy clothes, having her room get really dirty, right?
Oh,
She
that's
would
crazy.
she unknowingly started creating things for people to start talking about her, and it came true. Like she went to the store one time, had a hole in her shirt, like she was like, I mean, like she looked like a bag lady, like a
Yeah.
homeless. And she
Yeah.
was like, oh, I'm just used to that, used to dressing like this now. She wasn't like that before, but then people start talking about her for real. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like you were living in disillusion, but your brain is trying to find ways to create that.
Certainty, right?
Yeah.
She couldn't deal with the uncertainty were people talking about me? So I'm just going to live it. That way I don't have to stress about it.
Yeah.
It's easier that way. It's easier to live in my certainty that doesn't
So no,
challenge that.
true.
Yeah, doesn't challenge my discomfort of the uncertainty.
Oh, dude, that's a good point. And then that's so true because the brain is always in that what if, and she had to see it. And then the brain says, I told you. And now she's living in this roller coaster of, I guess, certainty. And that's a really good way to put it. Because Tony Robbins says there's 6 human needs, right? The first one is certainty. Second is variety or uncertainty. The third one is significance. Fourth is connection. The fifth is contribution, and 6 is growth, right? And the first 4 needs have to be met in some way or fashion, whether you're lying to yourself or you're finding something in the world that you warped for it to fit that need, right? Like for example, stalkers would they would let's say mistake politeness for love, right? So a
Yep.
stalker would say, oh my goodness, like, oh, they said hi to me today. That means they like me, and they feel something that's not there, and they'll change that just to feel that need. That's crazy how you mentioned that.
It's a slight distortion, bro. It's
Yeah,
like it's seems true enough to be true.
true
So that
enough.
and it appeals to my desires, therefore I will chase after it and live as if it were true.
Dang.
Herein lies how you can see where lies are the enemy to our growth, the lie or the enemy to health, right?
That's
It's
crazy.
won or lost in the mind. So yeah, it's
Dang.
back to your original story there, like the start of it. I had this thought. I was just talking to a friend of how just like hope and like joy is contagious, so is doubt, and so is uh, complaining, negativity. I mean, we see so much of it, right? It's so much easier to go turn tribal than it is contributing and trying to be a part of a change. And yeah, there's certainty there too, right? Certainty of like, oh, I can just, there's that problem I can always get a little fuel from complaining about. And I don't know, man, ownership's hard, responsibility and discipline, and actually like just doing our best to respond the best we can to a situation versus slumping down into passivity and complaining.
Nah, it's funny because like when they complain, it people tend to, well, first of all, they're crying for help. Right? Like I need, I'm looking, I have
Right.
to, I have a problem in my mind, and I have to bring it out to the world so you can see it, and maybe you can help me with it. So a lot of times you complain, but in reality, I just have a pain and I have to actualize it by bringing it in front of you as well. Maybe you'll fix it.
Mm.
A lot of the time when someone complains as well alongside them, it builds connection, right? Where at that point it's like, oh, now I feel a little bit better, but they
Yeah.
complain a lot more.
Mm.
And a lot of times people mistake activity for progress, right? So by them
Yes.
complaining to someone and they're actively doing, they're like, I am trying to find help, but really you're just complaining, right? So they mistake that. And that's a really good point there.
Really good point. Activity mistaken as progress. That's a really good one because it makes me think of reading or like learning. Like we never stop
Mhm.
learning, and there's nothing wrong with reading for enjoyment or still reading a book, but you want to lead with like the application or like pick up the right thing that applies to the problem you currently have, right? But there's nothing wrong with like I want to learn more in history. You know what I mean? Have you ever seen Ray Dalio's stuff?
No,
Ray
but I do
Dalio.
love
So he's
history now.
yeah, he's principles. He wrote an epic book on principles, and then he wrote one on like the changing world orders. And he like basically he made this amazing. It has like 30 million views. Like this super well done 30-40 minute animation that shares the premise of his book. And he's very like principles systems thinker, like first principles. Like what is the patterns here of history and what goes into the changing of world orders and what happens when the government starts printing money, what happens with inflation, and when there's internal, external tensions, there's debt, and he goes through these key components that come together to usually culminate a collision in history, French Revolution, with whatever point in history, world wars. But it's very fascinating, and I think he would guesstimate we're on like stage 5 or pushing towards 6 being the last one, and like it's just I mean, you've seen kind of the tensions with China, and I don't know, not to get into whole politics, but I'm not sure how I got there, but there's some really
Got that.
insightful things of patterns, right? If you can see the patterns.
That's a really good point. No, you got there because you were talking
History.
about people making to uh people confusing activity like reading books into progress. And then we said we were talking about how reading books in this sense get distracted. I have actually had that too, and I might even read that book that you mentioned. That sounds really really cool. Um, and then I think if anything, that I want to look into that because like right now we're as business owners, I feel like we sometimes get distracted
Mm.
with let's just chase this win, and there's so much more going on in the world, right? Which is like, and this your point there, something could roll over into the best the best indicator of the future is the past, right? So if he kind of boiled it down to one book and explained the process, the framework is there, right? So the
Yeah.
question is, if you read the book, did you read the book?
I haven't read the book, just watched most of the video. It's like
Infographic.
just a recent discovery of mine.
So
He was in
now,
Tom Bilyeu. Really good
oh,
stuff.
see, so I love that. So in this case, like Alex Hormozy says, whenever he reads a book, he doesn't read another book until he ingrains what he learned from the previous book. In this case, How to Win Friends and Influence People. He says, now that I read it, I'm going to apply what I learned.
Yes.
So that way it becomes a habit for me. And he did that inside of Russell Brunson's group. Because he knew sales, he went to in the inner circle. He was a member of the inner circle, and he helped other inner circle members with their sales. He says, hey, this is what I would do. And he would do all for free as a way to build friends and influence people. Fast forward a couple years, now he has this goodwill that has returned, right? They helped him out with copywriting. They helped him out with
Snowballing.
websites. Yeah. So,
Quite a bit.
and that's crazy. It's crazy. So reading a book, I now apply the idea. I don't want to proceed with another book until I apply it.
Especially when the book is like How to Win Friends and Influence People, man. It's evergreen. It's so core principles that are like never going to go out of fashion. And asked me if literally this morning while working out, I was like, dude, I need to reread the Russell Brunson trilogy and just like know it like I know my name, because that was the goal. It is evergreen. And just knowing these principles for acquisition, influence, serving people with effective messaging, like the more we can do those as a business owner, the more we're gonna, and he even mentions like doing it, iterating as you go. Like it's not gonna be, it's not like, oh, I cracked the code. It's an ever evolving thing, but you do it on the ground of those principles, the frameworks that are always gonna work.
That's a whole good point, because I heard a quote this morning. I heard, like, in the morning I try to read something that uplifts my spirits in the morning, followed by prayer, of course. But the quote that I read was, "Ambition is the path to success, and persistence is the vehicle that will get you there." Right? And it's funny because as you're going through these stages of life to help you get better, the information you read from Russell Brunson's books are little pieces. Like only one chapter can be enough to help you get to that next stage, right? And if you persistently work through the books, and you don't have to master everything, just start picking things and applying them, right? In the long game, it'll work for you, because it's kind of like the other saying by Simon Sinek, right? When you shout on the mountaintops what you're about and you plant your flag, the first people that come out is the village idiots, but then soon after, the wise counsel comes and want to follow your lead, right? And it's like, if you're doing that long enough and you're learning the things and you're being loud about it, I think that's the secret right there, right? Secret.
Yeah, it's like the whole where you make it public that you like have your audience keep you accountable, or like the whole negative charity thing, or if you break the streak, then money goes towards something that is not good that you do not support. Like the louder you are, the more people you have watching you sometimes can be, or a lot of times can be, extra fuel to keep you accountable, because you're actually, all right, I'm publicly declaring this is who I want to become. This is the direction I'm heading in. But then you still have to boil it down into trying to enjoy each day, because not every day is fun and daisies.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. If anything, we forgot to go live. We've actually forgot to go live in this episode. We're supposed to see now we owe $5.
We didn't have anybody hold us accountable. So
yeah, no, that's it. I think that's it, because we forgot, like, stepping into it. I was already late trying to fix this mic, right? So forgot.
Next time, right?
Next time, definitely. If not, now we owe $5 to a charity. That's
we'll put it in the jar,
right?
And a mutual cash app.
Yeah. No, I love that. If anything, now that we're being persistent and trying to move toward the goals of success, I even started doing some research that I thought would be really cool to highlight, and show kind of this roadmap that I'm learning, and we're both learning. This one from Steve Larson, his Internet Launch Secrets. He breaks down the path of what a company would do in order to get to a point of launch, but more importantly, how to stay in that orbit, so that way your business can grow and thrive over time. And he mentioned that he uses this same framework for all his clients every single time, even for his own business. He's now bringing in about 8 million a year. And that was in 2021. So I'm sure it's a lot more now. He's acquired 3 businesses that were already cash positive. So he's going to push it further. And he's using these he used the
He
same
knows how to put
framework.
it in orbit, right?
Exactly.
Like he just sees that
Exactly.
I know how to put things in orbit, so let's go.
Exactly. So with that information in mind, I think it would be best for us to do that live. So that way we can not only be accountable, but also show our starters what it would take to step by step look into the things that are needed and then break that up. And then of course give it away. Give what we've done away for free. That way we're not just copywriting Steve Larson's work, but if anything, applauding it, right? Like, hey, this is what we did. This is what he mentioned. If you want to see the full thing to apply it to yourself, go to Steve Larson's. And I bet you after that, he'll be willing to interview us, right? That's
Let's
2
do it.
steps above, right?
Roll the sleeves
That's the
up.
trick,
Yeah.
right?
Which applies to win friends and influence people. And
Yeah.
that's a great project to apply everything we're talking about. So let's do it.
Yeah. I would love that. So if anything, next week or along the way, break one piece at a time after I show it with you, because of course it is our baby, right? And I kind of just brain dumped what I had in between on the weekends between family time, right? Which is a bad thing. A bad thing. I'm like, let me just write this down real quick.
Not if it gets it out and keeps you fueled and more cleared up for the other moments, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it's hard because I getting in that zone of like, I remember sitting down doing one piece of it and I got so far deep into the zone, like I forgot, like, time flew, right? That's how good it was. I loved it. But then
back to the
when I
original
left it-
conversation, like if you have a whole week where you didn't feel like you really got to get in that mode, dude, if you get into it on that day, it's or have someone knock on the door, you're gonna be in there for all day.
No, for real. That is so true. I think what really starts, especially when we talk our initial conversation, in the morning time when you can start it, it puts you in that flow state. Like for me, if I do a podcast in the morning, I can just speak and get into it about things I'm learning. My brain gets into that flow state, and the whole day feels amazing. I feel juiced. Right, I feel juiced. But
So we need to switch our time, right? Time zones are a dog.
I could, yeah, no, seriously, or just create our little short clips, like how Russell Brunson did it, right? Or go live every day, right? That could be another thing too. So
There's something magical about this, about the conversational, someone asking you questions. I have a weekly rhythm with a friend, and it's the same thing, more on spiritual topics, but we talk about faith and family and everything, but like, you feed each other, spark.
yeah,
That's I think that's a good challenge here is like, who do you have in your life that will challenge you and you can challenge them and hold each other accountable? We're talking about accountability, right? Vulnerability, if you want to throw that in there, that's a real recipe for growth and self-awareness. Someone you can trust. And so I feel like, dude, if you try to go at this route, you try to build a business or you try to pursue a goal all alone, or maybe it's not all alone, you have people around you, but you haven't really have an actual deep relationship, that person or people or community. You know what I mean? Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, that's a good point. That's like a battle buddy, right? In the military, they always say 2 is 1 and 1 is none, right? You never go out without your battle buddy.
Exactly.
And that's so true. You have someone you can lean on. If anything, they say there's even studies that prove that if you have someone who holds you accountable, you're actually 70% more likely to complete the task than if you were not otherwise. So we have these secrets
I like
in
those
life.
numbers.
Yeah, right. Like 70%, like that's like passing, right? If it was a score in a grade, it's always gonna be winning.
Close enough to be 80-20, right?
Yeah, like that's crazy. And of course, fact check those numbers, but I know it's high. And what I realized is that we play this game of life where we can add cheat codes at any point along the way, right? You see someone who does it and you apply it yourself. Sometimes, like when you're playing a PlayStation, you look it up on Google, you're like, I found a cheat code. Let me try it. Up, down, left, right, triangle, circle. And it doesn't work. Whatever. At least you tried. right? But you try another one, and before you know it, like in Grand Theft Auto, a helicopter spawns from the sky, and it's like that's kind of how it works. Like if we're seeing these opportunities that you saw along the way, like in the book, what was it? Habits. What was it? Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits. Yep.
He gives you a bunch of cheat codes about how to improve your environment that will pretty much guarantee your success. Right? If you have that cheat code, why not apply that and make it real? Right? And of course it's like I had a friend of mine who unfortunately passed away, but he gave me so much gold nuggets. He was a CEO of a company by the age of 22, right? At that age, making around 180,000 a year, right? At 22, like it's dumb. And he gave me so much advice, and he said everything when it comes to life and opportunities is all calculated risk, right? If you roll that dice and you know you can get a 10, then roll that dice, right? Because you're gonna win. But if you're gonna roll that dice and you only can get like a 4 and 5 is what you need to pass, maybe you might want to adjust your roll, or maybe choose a different mountainside, whatever the case is to roll it. But figure out how to make it a 6 before you take action, right? And he gave me that, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna take this advice. At the time, I was making like 13 an hour, right? He was making like 60, 80 an hour.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's calculated risk, and these cheat codes help you win.
Yeah.
Day.
And hot take from that perspective is I'd almost say cheat codes are another word for cheat codes is those principles or frameworks or the way reality works. Instead of fighting against reality, trying to reinvent the wheel or come up with something new, have that base, right? Because cheat code doesn't necessarily mean shortcuts. Doesn't necessarily mean ease. And if you have that expectation, then you're going to expect that GTA cheat code that just makes the helicopter come out of the sky. And but like principles are cheat codes, like frameworks are cheat codes in the sense of, wow, you can actually like stand on them. You can actually see things, and they'll actually work for you. Instead of you trying to figure something out completely on your own.
It's like enhancements.
Exactly.
That's a really good point, because a lot of times you do a cheat code and you, just like we said, it cuts corners and a helicopter comes out the sky. But in real life, if a helicopter was given to you, do you know how to fly a helicopter? Right? Probably not. And I think that's a really good way that you said it right now. You take those steps to earn the helicopter. You even probably went to helicopter school first, which is how you would even find the helicopter. So by cutting that corner and going straight for the helicopter, you may not even know how to fly in the first place. So I love that you said have the enhancement, right? The enhancement says, I see how this works and I see the path ahead of me. Now start taking the steps. Yeah. And
you're not going into the woods like trying to get back on the path. You're just like, here's a path. I may find, cross some bears and some animals and beasts across the way where, you have to stop and sleep. Doesn't mean I just instantly get there.
Yes, that's a really good point. And Dana Derrick said the same thing when he paid $50K to get into Russell's inner circle, right? And he says a lot of the times the best money that he spent was getting the perspective from someone ahead of him, because at that point he didn't know that life was that way, right? He was like, wow, like I'm supposed to be acting like that in order to get that. I didn't know that. So this was the best $50,000 I've ever spent. And now what? He owns 3 houses. He has 3 or 4 different 2 Comma Club awards, which means he's making millions.
Yeah.
I actually spoke to him. He hit me up today, saying we still have
Seems like a great guy.
He's a really, really great guy. Seriously. And at the end of the day, he says, like, what I realize is that this game, it's out there already. Like, we already know it. We just don't do it long enough.
Exactly, bro.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think if anything, like, what are your thoughts right on that?
I was just gonna say, like, he was breaking free from illusions. Like, if you don't know, you don't know, and so all you do is come up with something in your head, and it's oftentimes an illusion, or can be a hindrance. That's powerful. But I even thought, okay, what's that look like in our lives too? Like, I want dads that are a few steps ahead of me to help me apply this in father mode, and husbands, and I love if you can find someone that trifecta, right? Of like if you're a dad and a husband, or flip the roles, wife, find someone that's also pursuing what you do in business, someone who's done what you want to do, live the life you want to, at least a few steps ahead, and build that relationship and like help them be that person to show you. I think you can have multiple people like that in your life, but some people just don't. They haven't gone that path, and you're hoping they can help give you some insights, but they don't know the map either. Like they haven't been on that.
True. That is so true, man. I think at the end of the day, our world isn't only confined to our career, but also your environment. Like, what are we doing to change the world? Our personal development, our fun and recreation. Do we even have that? Like our romance, like how you treat your spouse. Tony Robbins says, if you act the same way you did in the beginning of the relationship, there will be no end. And I had to find it out the hard way, right?
Yeah.
But there's so many different avenues to our life that sometimes we got to step out and look at the whole picture, right? A well-rounded life, right? So I like that you mentioned that.
Yeah, it's amazing that we actually become more of who we're supposed to be when we give more of ourselves, like make it less about us, right?
Yeah.
Like in marriage, right? You can't live off of the lovey-doveys of the starting days of dating. It's not 50-50, it's 100-100. You giving each other to serve and to build something special. But yeah, I'm right there with you.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, look at what do people regret on their deathbed. I mean, you can see all the studies or stories of that. It's never, man, I wish I would have hit the next million. Wish I would have hit the next level on the billionaire code. Love the billionaire code. We're going to use it, but you got to make sure that the foundation's strong, right? And the actual direction. And yeah, career's not everything.
That's a good point.
I think that's always important to keep right up here when you're thinking about success.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. But then taking time to celebrate the wins that you have done, right?
Yeah,
man, I love that. I'm gonna look that up. And if anything, in the next episode, we're gonna definitely start highlighting that process of what we're learning from Dana, from Steve Larson, right? And try to make that a little bit more real, because I'm starting to see a lot of people who are asking, and I would love to lay that out. At the same time, it'll help us build clarity, right? So I think that's a great idea.
Yes, document and build simultaneously.
Yeah,
that's
seriously.
Cool.
Seriously. Well, I'm loving it. This is more of a powwow today versus a straight to golden nugget points. But
dude, mindset's important, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta have the right lenses to navigate, and it's a work in progress.
Right. Exactly.
It will be to the end, right? It's a journey.
Exactly.
Embrace that cliche. You're the one that makes it cliche.
Right. That's the truth, man. That's the truth. Well, thank you, Noah. Until next week, we'll keep pulling those little successes for everyone and make it a little bit more open sourced.
See you next week, bro.
See ya.
Hey, thanks for watching the Success Open Source Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, we would love for you to subscribe and join the community. Until next time, take care, and let's all make success a little more open source.